Hello guys, welcome back to another Divinity Original Sin 2 video. This is the last of the Hydra Aero advanced guides that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be covering the Hydro / Aero Mage for this one. So yeah, should be pretty fun. Okay. So in this party, I actually used two mages. Seeing that the focus was on magic alone, I had a summoner who was played by Beast and a ranger as well. Both are very they ease from magic to physical very easily. And being a Hydra Aero party, a physical melee unit doesn't really fit the mold, so I was given a choice: do I make another ranger or should I make another mage? So I ended up going with two mages for this party, and it makes complete sense. They both hit extremely hard and they complement each other very well. Now when I see people speaking about party builds, etc., they speak about, going like a pyro and a geomage, or geo hydra, or mixtures of one or the other, and it never really made any sense to me, because really, in my view, you want to be complementing each other and improving each other, which is exactly what two Hydra and Aero mages do. You want to really be going dual of like different schools, granted, because you don't want to completely cockblock yourself with resistances. And this is what I think the Hydra Aero really does. If something's heavily resisted, you can always fall back on the other elements, and they both complement each other, because rain, the stuns, the freezes, they all reduce resistances, which both mages are using. So you're increasing your damage, you're working together for crowd control, and you can always fall back on another element if one is completely resisted, which is why they both work really well together. Now, if you've got a Hydra and an Aero mage, a Hydra Aero mage with a Geo and a Pyro mage, they conflict. They're not working together. You can do it, but they're not working together, which is why I don't like it and I don't recommend it, and I don't think it's optimal play at all. So if I'm ever going to have two mages inside of a party, most likely I would recommend doing basically two of the same, so you can complement each other. And the same can work with Pyro Geomages. Pyro Geomages work best together because there's going to be burning, they're going to be setting surfaces alight, they can use the same surfaces for elemental affinity, and the same thing with the Hydra Aero. There's two elements. If one's resisted, most likely the other is going to be able to cover up that weakness. So when making your mages or your mage, what race would I recommend you using? Again, as always, I will always say, depends on what you want your other party members to be. But I would say mages are pretty high on the priority list because they're very good damage dealers. But my answer would probably be the same whether you need to consider your other party members or if you can just freely choose if you're in will. I would always recommend the likes of Thane. He's always a good candidate for any single role in the game. But Sibyl or Elves, custom Elves, do a great job because they do one of the best jobs, because everybody likes an extra free 1 AP, which is great for Flesh Sacrifice, but Flesh Sacrifice works best with mage characters because of the way the damage increase affects spells versus skills. In other words, spells get a better benefit from the sacrifice. Humans also make good for mages, extra crit chance. As part of this party though, I didn't have a human, and I was only able to use one of each race, so a human sort of naturally fit into the role. So you could use a custom elf. I would probably suggest going elves for your mages because I think they will do the most damage. But if you do need to, say, fit a human in if you want encourage, which has its uses, it's not a bad slot for them either. So I would suggest, as a Hydra Aero mage, you could look at Sibyl, custom elf. You can look at human if you need to fill that human role. Thane also makes a very good one. Red Prince, not really so much. There's no offensive abilities that really support for him being a Hydra Aero mage. Beast, you could definitely consider. You can definitely get a decent play out of Beast being a mage simply because of the blinding squall. If you're primarily focusing on Aero Forge, this will increase the damage on blinding squall, which has its positive uses. So he could make an argument for being a mage as well. They all make very good mages, but I would say the elves would make the most in terms of damage and additional AP. In terms of your stats, as a mage, you should be looking to maximize your intelligence first. Once you've maximized your intelligence, you should then be looking to put points into wits to increase your critical chance. Because mages tend to need a little bit of points into memory, you'll probably find that you will need to put some points into it here and there. Constitution isn't really something that you're going to be needing, but very gear dependent. Like, you might need Constitution in this case of Sibyl. She needs to take into consideration for the sacrifice and how much Constitution it reduces in order to wear equipment. But most of the time, and for the most part of the game, as long as you're not using a shield, which you shouldn't be doing, you won't really need to consider your Constitution. The Strength Finesse gear is something that you're not really going to be touching, to be quite honest. But when you get super late game, when there is some very good unique options, then you might, and you probably will need to consider those to meet the requirements. Other than that, you probably won't need to touch points into Strength or Finesse. In terms of your gear choices, I'm not going to definitively tell you what is the absolute best in terms of the great DPS. I've gone with two different sets here, mostly from the unique item choices here in Arcs, of what I would consider to be very good gear for each build. Playing a Hydra Aero mage, you're going to be looking for points into Aero Forge, crit chance, other school points to meet requirements. Huntsman is also a very good one to get. Scoundrel also. As well as two-handed. You should be looking to wield a two-handed weapon. I'd say mid to late game is a good sort of time to sort of pick up two-handed. My suggestions for gear would be early game, look to pick up wands, dual wands, simply because they're consistent damage. You're lacking spells, you're lacking consistent damage, and the damage from the spells to wands isn't that huge earlier in the game. And also when you're using a staff, you get the one-time Magus use, whereas wands you can use to attack multiple times. The reason why I would suggest changing up that strategy during the mid-game is around level 9, because You gain access to the well, which gives you belt and rings. You can get plus two-handed on the hand items and the belt items, so you can just get some additional damage from that. So if there's a damage increase for your spells from your belt in your hands in an offensive way, which you wouldn't be able to get from using a wand and shield or dual wands. So that's the reason why you would want to go with a two-handed weapon, so you can get some additional damage from those item slots. So as you can see, I've got an array of different score skills. As you can see here, we've got plus two-handed. We're actually using, this is where it's all a bit weird. We're actually using the Devourer's Claws plus two-handed on the gloves. Probably something that people don't tend to think about. Even Divine Spark, typically a melee weapon, but again, plus two-handed on it, 25% crits. We're not using it for the swings, we're using it for the stats. Again, here for the legs, because of the extra rune slots, I'm actually putting it to use. So that's one. And here's the other again. As you can see, familiar faces. Huntsman, Intelligence, Aero. Again, you can see two-handed on the belt. Really nice pants, they're really cool. So that gives you an idea of what stats you should be looking for. As you can see over here, we've gone strength to meet requirements for Divine Spark, didn't need anything in finesse. But again, as you can see, maximum intelligence. Crit chance is important, but I've kind of just gone with this mixed blend of just getting consistent damage. Obviously that would change if you were to use items, etc. We could increase our maximum crit chance, but I think because of the way that I build and play, it is naturally just going to be a little bit lower because there's other things that I lean towards. In terms of building your mages, there is a number of ways that you can do this. It depends on what you want out of your mage. Now, there's single class mages which you can play. I don't really recommend this though. I would recommend dual. Dual meaning Hydro, Aero, Pyro, Geo, etc. A single class would just be Pyro, Aero, blah blah blah. So yeah, the reason why I don't recommend that is because you get completely cock-blocked. If there's enemies that completely resist you, you have no way of backing up or doing anything inside of the battle. Whereas if you're a dual, then you can always switch from one element to the other and not really suffer too much in coming across enemies that have high resistance. But yeah, I would... There is general rules around how you should build the mage. So early and throughout the game, if you're playing as a dual mage, the correct answer and where you should start putting your points normally is the same element that you want to increase the damage for. So if you want to increase your Aero damage, you would put your points into Aero first. If you want to increase your Hydra damage, you would do Hydra Sophist. Sounds very obvious. But the problem is if you want to be equally as strong in Hydra and Aero, if you start putting points into your Aero your Hydra Sophist is going to end up lacking. So this is where the choice comes into mind. Do you want to be a stronger Aero mage than a Hydra mage? Do you want to be a stronger Hydra mage than an Aero mage? Or do you want to be equally as strong at both? Being equally strong at both means that you're more flexible in your journey. You can hit as hard with either spells, but it does come at a price. So if you want to just focus on your Aero and like have Hydro as a backup, put the necessary points into Hydro to meet the requirements, and then just put points into Aeroforge. And you can max out Aeroforge. And vice versa. If you want to be a stronger Hydro mage, put the necessary points into Aeroforge and maximize your Hydro Sophist. However, if you want to focus on both, what you want to do is maximize your Huntsman first, meet the requirements for Hydro and Aero. What this is going to do for you is, as long as you can get on high ground, you are naturally going to increase the damage from Aeroforge and Hydro and any other spell that you actually do. So, whilst leveling, playing as a dual mage that you want to be as strong on both sides, you go Huntsman. Because you put 1 point into Huntsman and you increase both damage, in comparison to just putting 1 point into one school and only increasing the damage from that element. So that's how you should really be looking at it. Once you've maximized your Huntsman, you can then make another decision. Do you want to be stronger in Aeroforge? Do you want to be stronger in Hydro Sophist? You can then start putting points into one of those elements. Or again, if you want to continue as being as strong as both as you can, but only whilst you're on high ground, you can look at putting points into Scoundrel. Scoundrel again is going to increase your critical multiplier of both schools. Whereas again, if you were just to want to focus on Aeroforge, that's just going to increase the damage from that. You won't really be putting points into two-handed. Really, it's only there so that you can increase your damage whilst picking up gear for it. So, like I've said, you are passively kind of just increasing your damage from 2 item slots that wouldn't really be doing anything else for you. So it's just more of a thing that you would do to increase your damage passively. It's not really something that you're ever going to be investing in. So, playing a dual mage, you stack your Huntsman first, then you decide what you want to do. Do you want to be stronger Aero, Hydro, or both? And then you just make the decision, and then you go along with that, basically. I would say throughout the game, there is very few that's resistant to air. And maybe, again, very few that's resistant to Hydro as well. So, I personally go with Huntsman, getting them both strong, and then at a certain point, I will lean more towards Aero. And then just use a Hydro spell or whatever just to increase my overall damage. Or if I want to do certain things with a Hydro spell. So the spells and skills that you're going to be using along the way. Most of it, I'm just going to be covering the offensive stuff more than anything. Rain is absolutely a must. You want this on a few characters at least, but what it does provide you is it provides you surface for elemental affinity and produces resistance. There is other things that it does do, but those are the important things that it will do for you. And of course, it benefits not just you, but the rest of the party, in particular your other mage friend too. Early game, you'll only have Electric Discharge and Hellstrike. Electric Discharge is pretty tame, to be honest. Once you start getting a number of AoE abilities, you won't really need to use this anymore. It's just to help carry you through for joy, essentially. And Hellstrike, again, is something that you will use particularly early game. You may even drop it in the mid game once you have other options available to you. The really good thing about the Electric Discharge is you can actually use it to kill your own totems as well. It's actually really good for that. And there is great ways of getting good use from Hellstrike. With Hellstrike, you need to be conscious about walls, etc., because it is quite sensitive to them. But the best way to use it is, it takes a little bit of getting used to. There is ways you can get it to hit up to 12 times as long as you're teleporting and maneuvering enemies in close proximity to each other in order to get a lot more hits than what tend to see people getting from it. Hence why whenever I see tier lists, Hellstrike from people is marked pretty low, but it does have much better potential than it's given credit for. Around level 4, you'll pick up Dazing Bolt, and you'll pick up Winter's Blast and Ice Fan. Some really good additions, actually. Dazing Bolt is a large AoE. Again, can be used to damage your own totems, which can trigger executions, which is really good. And you have Winter's Blast and Ice Fan as really good ice options, particularly earlier in the game. So whilst I'm talking about these, it's probably good that I mention about how to increase your damage as a mage. Now, Rain reduces resistances, water resistance and air resistance. And the same applies to chilled and shocked. Ooh. Shocked is minus 15. And I believe that chilled is maybe 20%. Yeah, minus 20%. So really what you want to be looking to do is when you're using your spells, right? Before actually doing anything offensive, you'll generally want to cast Rain. Rain will naturally reduce their resistances, which is going to increase the damage of all your spells. You need to take into account the enemy resistances to what spells are going to do most damage. Am I going to be better off doing Hydro spells or Aero spells? So what you're going to really be looking to do is you're going to be doing your damage. Let's just say there's just one enemy here, and I don't know, you're on the verge of basically reducing their magic armor down to 0 to nothing. They are currently wet, so if you were to use Dazing Bolt, you would end up stunning the target. Now this is where you have options. This is where you could use your frost spells or a frost spell to continue to reduce their resistance. So the situation is you've just stripped their armor, they were currently wet, you've cast Dazing Bolt, they are now stunned. Now what if you, so what you can do now is you can cast the likes of Winter's Blast on top of the target, then the target will be chilled plus stunned. So that's going to reduce his resistance even harder towards your air spells. So it's always quite a nice idea to strip the armor, get them stunned, and then use, say, Winter's Blast, and then all those enemies will be stunned and chilled, which is going to lower their resistance to the lowest it can possibly be. You can do the same with rain, so you can have stunned and wet on the targets at the same time, which is pretty crazy. If you're trying to do this with Ice Fan, be very wary that if you're going to try casting all three, it's going to be soaked up by each fan. So the first one will chill, the second will eat the chill, and then the third one will apply chill again, if you catch my meaning. Same can be said for Hellstrike. So you just need to be mindful in increasing your the way you increase your damage. And this is why it's really so much better to play 2 Hydro and Aero mages versus an Hydro and Aero and something else, because you couldn't complement each other's damage the same way you can playing a different kind of mage altogether. So the same really should be thought about a lot of the other spells here. I would say that you want to be using, for the most part, again, depends on enemy resistances, but what you can do is, what I think you should be doing is, targets should be wet, and you should be using your hardest hitting spells to reduce that magic armor, because the resistances are going to be lower than if I was to say, if I was to hit something that was wet, I would hit harder by doing that, opposed to trying to use it whilst they were just stunned. I understand it's not always possible and every situation is different, and you won't always want to do the Hydro spell after you've stripped the armor. Sometimes you actually want to be doing more Hydro damage, so you'll want to freeze them instead. If you're looking to freeze the enemy, they can't be shocked whilst they're frozen. So the way to approach it is like this. If your focus of damage is Aero, strip down with the hardest spells, so you hit the hardest. Then you can apply chill to increase the resistance that they have. If your focus is on Hydro, try to get them stripped down and to freeze them, so you increase the Hydro damage. Of course, every situation is different, so it's pretty complex to tell which situation you should be doing what. But I'd say, as a general rule, strip down with your hardest spell, so it gets the most damage from wet, and then you need to ask yourself, am I looking to stun? Am I looking to freeze? What spells am I looking to follow up with, which will do the most damage? Do I need to apply chill? Those kind of questions that you need to ask. But those are the questions that give you the answers to being able to do is as much damage as possible. Superconductor is pretty unique move. The best way to use this is to have the enemies stacked up on top of each other, so you can basically get double hits, which makes it one of the most stronger Aero spells in the game if used correctly. There is a cool way of getting superconductor earlier in the game than intended. The earliest you can get superconductor is, I believe, at level 12. It might be 12, it might be 13. But the way that you can obtain superconductor early is by talking to Lohar, who has a scroll. So you take the scroll, and then I think you need to combine it with a high quality Aeroforge blank book, and then you can combine the two and then create your own one. So that's how you can obtain that, and the best way to use it is to get enemies clumped up on top of each other so they can hit multiple times. So we're sort of talking around mid game now, when you're gonna get the likes of superconductor, chain lightning, and really at this point you don't really need the likes of the discharge anymore, because you'll have access to pressure spike, you'll have access to dazing bolts, superconductor, chain lightning, and then maybe a few of these hydro spells as well, along with skin graft. You just don't need the single target damage anymore. It's a complete waste of time, and that's how you keep your memory down, is as trim as possible, whilst having a good array of AoE abilities at the same time. Thunderstorm, it's best used alongside Apotheosis. You don't necessarily need to wait that long, but you can use it before. But it would require using Source Vampirism in order to maybe use Chain Lightning as well. But yeah, definitely you won't need so many spells once you have access to Thunderstorm. The only reason why I have what I have on the bar currently is simply because I can't actually go any lower. Oh, maybe that's a lie. Maybe that is a lie. Nope, that is not a lie. I simply can't go lower. So yeah, that's why I have pressure. So I knew there was a reason why I had pressure spike. So yeah, I get 3 from rooted, and then 3 from something else. Correct. Let me just confirm that. It's actually going to bug me. Let's go to Hall of Echoes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've set up like this for a reason. Yeah, 16. Oh no. No, that's not true. I don't actually need it, guys. Oh well, that's an extra one in there then. So yeah, I would probably drop the pressure spike at that point and then keep that. So yeah, keeping the memory as trim as possible. And yeah, the reason why you would just drop pressure spike is simply because you should be able to access electrified water at all times, and these will get the job done alongside Apotheosis. The reason why I would keep the Dazing Bolt is just so I can kill totems, whereas these don't necessarily do that. So that's the only reason why that I would even keep this on the bar at this point in the game too. Skin graft is pretty broken, I would say. It basically allows you to minimize your memory use because you don't need to use so many spells. You just use the really powerful ones, and you can just use them in its own way. You can use it to gain more adrenalines in the same turn, more flesh sacrifice in the same turn, which gives you more AP, more damage. It's pretty darn broken. Apotheosis, like I said, enables you to use the likes of Thunderstorm and Chain Lightning. You can use it all in the same turn. Think of the absolute broken amount of AP you can get per turn, especially with a build like this. It becomes pretty absurd. Flesh sacrifice, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, is best served with a mage because of the multiplicative damage increase, and of course with the increase in AP, which works exceptionally well with Skin Graft, but that works the same with any build. Speaking of my other mage, my human mage, gone with Death Wish on one of my mages. My summoner also has the Death Wish, as well as the Death Wish on for shield. So really what I can do is I can actually set up another death. No. Is I mean it's an option, right? You can set multiple death wishes up on your characters. You can do it on a couple of them. You can do it on all of them. For this presentation, I haven't actually got it up on all of them, but this is something that I do play with a lot, and I think it's pretty amazing, especially on mages. Again, works the same way as the Flesh Sacrifice, in that it's multiplicative damage instead of additive for a skill user. So the reason why I like the Death Wish is it really meshes the way that I play the game. So this is one thing I've not actually touched on yet, is the talents. Now, this can chop and change throughout the game, and there's certain points things make more sense. If you want to set things up properly for each battle, I would suggest going Glass Cannon, though it's not necessarily needed early game because you just don't really have the spells to accommodate all the AP that you do have. Savage Sortilege is only really good to get once you get a substantial amount of critical chance. If you, again, depends if you're someone who wants to take the time to get critical and gear around level 9, then it's maybe worth using at that point in the game. Maybe it's probably best to use at level 13. That would probably be my advice. So for me, I would be looking at maybe getting Executioner, Glass Cannon, is absolutely fine thing to start off the game with. You can even start off with Executioner and Elemental Affinity. Any arrangement of those three is perfectly fine. At level 8 you can have all three of them, but it's only really worth using Elemental Affinity if you're going to be using it to its full use, if you're going to be considering using it before getting Glass Cannon. Also, the other sort of thing about using Glass Cannon is that if you want to be using it alongside Elemental Affinity, positioning is very, very, very finicky. You will need to place your characters like right on the edges of surfaces in order to get the benefit for your Hydra and your Aero spells, which is what makes it so finicky in terms of your positioning. Because if you step on the surface, you will get shocked, which is a pain in the ass. So that's why it's all a little bit iffy with these talents with the Hydra Air Mage, because of the surfaces and how annoying they can be to get access to whilst positioning correctly, just to get the benefits out of all of the stuff. It can be really, really, really annoying. But anyway, I would still look at those three as your main ones. 13, you could look at picking up Savage Sortilege, so you can actually get some critical strikes in. And then for the last one, I would look at getting Water Rush at level 18, which is going to coincide with you having reduced HP, increasing your damage with Death Wish, going to increase your maximum AP to 7 with Water Rush. So it all kind of blends in together to increase your maximum AP, your maximum damage, which is also the reason why you need to consider Necromancer on your characters as well, which is why I don't have it on both of my mages. I have it on one of them. Is that Necromancer works as lifesteal. So if you're lifestealing and your idea is to use Water Rush, it's gonna work against what you want your characters to do. So as you can see, for this character, I have 0 in Necromancer. The one that I have Death Wish on happens to have 4. So really, I want this character to be acting first, because you're not life-stealing of dealing damage to armor, so you can still get full effect from Water Rush, Death Wish, without it hindering and increasing your health too quickly, if you understand what I'm saying. So these sort of things I think about whilst playing the game, or played the game. And that's just something that you need to be aware of when you're using the likes of Death Wish, when you're using the likes of Water Rush, is the lifesteal that your characters have. You actually kind of don't want it. Some cases that you don't really have a choice. Sometimes you do. But again, it's just these things that you should really be thinking about. So yeah, those are the talents that I would be looking at, and that's also the reason why I don't look at Hothead, which is why my critical chance isn't as high as some would maybe think. But that's just simply because I'm increasing my overall damage for Death Wish. The likes of 5-star Diners, stuff that I don't actually consider because I consider it to be absolutely broken. Don't use items, etc. either. So that is why I've not included it in this guide at all. I like to run one human inside of the party, because Encourage at times can actually be quite useful in getting gear on and keeping it on. It is a nice little Q buff, but it's not game breaking if you don't have it either. I would still consider having 2 elves to be better than having Encourage, but rules are rules. As you can see, my 2 mages have slightly different skill setups. This is to minimize the amount of memory that I actually use. One of them I've got Death Wish, and I also have Teleportation. The other I have set up with Peace of Mind. Again, this is so that I can keep all my characters that do damage to have the Peace of Mind buff up. I can get one from Beast. I have one here. I can have one pre-set up as well. So I have ways of keeping peace of mind up in all my characters. My two mages have minimal memory, so again, they're as strong as they can possibly be. I'm running Dazing Bolt for totem kills. I'm running the Ice Fan simply at this point in the game because I don't have to worry about air resistance anymore, and these are just simply more powerful than the Hydro spells. So I've kind of lent in at this point of the game to go Aero over the Jewel, but throughout the game I would recommend going Huntsman before doing this. So yeah, Ice Fan is just simply there for killing totems, setting up a surface if I want to in a particular area. That's like one thing that you can do. So like before a fight, instead of casting rain where it's everywhere, just cast Ice Fan, and then you've got your water in a particular area, and then you can get easy access to it. And then like what I would recommend is like either using like an electric staff or a wand or something, depending on what stage in the game you're at. You can electrify your surfaces before combat. In fact, I'll show you now like what I would suggest doing. So once you get to Driftwood, you actually get this electric wand. So like what you're best off doing is like you'll set up a fight in a certain way. In fact, she's actually stood and there's connected, so like what you would do is you'd set up the fight, you do bloody blah, and then you just simply just do that without actually, oh my god. Alright girls, there you go. So yeah, set up combat, blah, and then start the fight. Yeah. Some of the little tricks I can remember. So that's the best way to sort of set up fights. You get everybody in position, you electrify your surface, and then boom, you're all good. And then also what I would suggest doing is, if you got your mages in combat from the beginning, you can use like tactical retreat to jump on the edges. So let's just say, yeah, you started the fight, this is electrified. You can use, tactical retreat, jump on the tip, you'll have hasted for the next round or so. So you start off a fight in a really good position. I'd only really recommend doing that if you don't need to use the mobility to get in and around the rest of the map, but most of the time you won't really need to do so, so it's a really nice way to start. Also, you could do this pre-combat as well. You can cast haste, you can tactical retreat to jump inside of the combat, again in the same way to position yourself on surfaces. So you can start fights with haste. You can start fights off with haste, which are going for multiple rounds. You can start off in a really nice position. There's a lot of different things you can do pre-combat to get closer onto surfaces. Again, all to benefit your character, basically. What else is there I could maybe teach you? I'm not really sure what else there is for mages. I mean, you can use teleports. I mean, I've said this in different videos and stuff as well. But what you can do with your teleport, you can actually teleport someone on top of a totem and kill the totem. You can actually use your teleportation to seek out stealth targets, right? So let's say if an enemy was stood here, if I was to cast teleport and then pick a target, I would then be able to see a circle over here, which will tell me that's where the stealth target is hiding. And you can do that along through the entire map. So it's a really clever way of figuring out where those stealth targets are without having to spend or do anything. So it's just something else just to be mindful of. Obviously, you can use the obvious, use rain to unveil them, but teleportation's a bit of a cool one, because you can actually use this whilst you're fighting your buddies, and if one of them decides to use Chameleon Cloak or something, you actually know how to deal with them and how to spot them and find out where they are. So that's all I got for this video. I'm sure there's more information that's eking around my brain, but it's just not coming to my surface right now. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask them and I'll do my best to answer them. Or if there's something that's unclear in the video, feel free to ask, and maybe I will be able to clarify it a little bit more clearly in the comments below or something. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and catch you guys in the next one.